We had you on the podcast a long time ago. We've had you on a few times. Always great.
Thank you.
To have you on the show. And I've referred to you as the godfather of wellness.
Thank you.
I've always considered you to be the person, one of the first people, mainstream people, to consider all the aspects of health as a sphere, rather than just being about fitness and nutrition. You look at health from very holistically. And again, you're one of the first people to do this. And so I thought you'd be the perfect person to talk about the role that spirituality plays in health. And I'd like to ask you first, well, number one, what is spiritual health? And then I guess from there, how important is spiritual health to overall health?
Well, it's critical right now. Probably my favorite definition of spirituality is connection to a progressively greater whole. So as people grow spiritually, they transcend structure stages of consciousness. Research shows that most people will not make more than one structure stage up if they do. So there's a number of models of structure stages, and a simple one is I-centric, so that when we're a child, everything's about us because we need mom to feed us. So if we're hungry, we say, "Mommy, I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. I want to play." So you know how children are. It's for their own survival. They have to be oriented toward their needs. Now that stage may never stop, and we have a lot of that going on, unfortunately, in adults today. But then a simple next step is we. So first you're I-centric, then you're what's called ethnocentric or my group. So you see that in families, you see that in religions. The Abrahamic religions are all ethnocentric. Their orientation is toward their beliefs and their group, and anybody else is wrong. But a person who grows from an I-centric to an ethnocentric is at least expanding their awareness out into a group. So instead of it just being, I'm hungry, it's what are we doing, or what are we going to do, or how are we going to accomplish this objective? Then you grow to world-centric, where you realize that everybody in the world, whether they have different colors of skin or different belief systems or different cultures, brings something to the table. And so when a person grows from an ethnocentric stage of consciousness to a world-centric, all of a sudden they find that one of their friends is reading a book on Buddhism or Taoism and practicing it, and they seem to be a lot happier and freer than they are. And then they start a conversation and they realize that there's things in these other approaches that expand their own awareness of themselves, of people, of the world. For example, they may have had this typical American opinion that sort of stereotypical that Chinese people are just kind of simpletons and don't really know much. And then they come across the Tao Te Ching and they read these 81 verses of poetry and it just splits them wide open. And they go, wow, these Chinese people are really tapped in. And then they read the Upanishads or the Vedanta or any number of the Hindu sutras, and they see tremendous beauty. And then they might go snooping around and find Shinto, a nature-based religion from Japan, and go, wow, the Japanese really have a beautiful fusion with nature. So all of a sudden, they feel a kinship to the Chinese, a kinship to the East Indians, a kinship to the Japanese. And they see that there's something that each of these cultures has that grows them and expands them. And instead of thinking they're the bad guy or they're just somebody with a different color skin and the stereotypical stuff that is classically the I and the we orientation, me against you is I, my group and my belief system against your system is the ethnocentric we. But when you reach the world level, you actually start realizing that you can find something of your soul. Something speaks to you deeper and deeper and deeper. Eventually, what happens is you may be studying science and cosmology and looking at the big picture, and all of a sudden you're hearing, John Wheeler talk about black holes, and you're hearing about the universe is bigger and bigger and bigger. As telescopes get bigger, the universe gets bigger. And the next thing you know, you're hearing about multiverse theories, and you're thinking, wow, the universe isn't the only place. And then you find out about multiverse theories from quantum physics, and you go, oh my God. And then then the omniverse, and universes give birth to other universes. And then you might study Itzhak Bentov, and you find out that the universe never had a beginning or an end. The Big Bang was just another Big Bang. And the universe, based on cosmology, stars explode, black holes form, they create new stars and give birth to a white hole, and out comes a new star. And what looked like a steady state universe, or one that was going to collapse in on itself, all of a sudden becomes a universe of birth, growth, maturity, death, birth, growth, maturity. And you realize, wow, everything's reinventing itself. And all of a sudden you find from the study of physiology and cosmology, wow, I'm made of the earth. My body comes from the earth, but the earth couldn't produce my body without the sun. And then we think, where'd the elements that made the earth come from? Well, some of them came from the sun, some didn't. Then we say, okay, where'd the elements in the sun come from? Well, guess what? The elements in the sun came from a myriad of other stars that exploded and reaggregated into our sun. And all of a sudden you come to the realization that who you think you are actually comes from everywhere in the universe, because every star explodes and becomes part of every other star. And so now you become what's called cosmocentric. So that would be the highest level of self-realization. So what I'm describing is spirituality is a process of progressively greater circles of wholeness and relationships, until all of a sudden you realize that who you are could not possibly happen without the participation of the entire universe, multiverse, omniverse. No matter what way you go, every single part of it's connected to every other part. It's all birthing, it's all growing, it's all going through a natural decay, a death process, and a rebirth process, just like a human being, just like a butterfly, just like an animal, just like an acorn starts off as a seed, becomes an oak tree, and produces new acorns, which makes more oak trees. So, in today where people are so locked down and so afraid, if they don't have this progressively larger connection, then they feel like an animal that's been caged and can't figure out how it's going to get itself out of there. And, it's well known that some animals will literally, like caught in a trap, will eat their own leg off to get free. So ultimately, spirituality lets you know that within you is the consciousness that creates the entire universe. Within you is the mineral elements and the metallic elements that come from the entire universe. Within you is the food that couldn't be here without the sun, without the moon, without the planetary influences. So ultimately, you can come to the realization that you're never alone, because everything that you are is everything around you. And that gives you a sense of magic, mystery, awe, and appreciation for life, empathy and compassion for others who haven't had the realizations that you've had. And naturally, that makes you want to share with people and say, hey, you know what? There's another way to look at this. And you know what? People with different colors, skins, and different belief systems can be just as cool as your own group, but you just have to be brave enough to be with them, be present, value them as just as wise and just as capable as you, and listen twice as much as you talk. And then the next thing you know, you start to feel safer and safer. You have more and more friends. You have more and more philosophies to draw from, more and more tools for problem solving. And you realize that the world is really a school for budding souls that ultimately have an end game of becoming a citizen of the cosmos.